Temperature 28 Fahrenheit. 28 Fahrenheit. Maybe 29, but I'm thinking it's 28. Mileage 6020. 6020. Good morning, folks. This is your old pal, Mike Cayley 7. Coming to you from my 2014 Ultra Classic Electric Glide. Today is the 11th of January, 2016. A shout out to Navy Thomas 8 real quick to congratulate him on his first Arctic Bear ride of the season, I think it was anyway, which is pretty cool. So this morning's news, as I ride along here, is David Bowie is dead, huh? That sucks. 69 years old. Cancer, apparently. So, yeah, there's that. That sucks. I was hoping I'd have a topic by now, but apparently I don't. I'm just still going on about something that stuck in my craw. That was the Civil War thing. There's this video, right, that this guy made. It was an audio recording of a Confederate soldier who was like 95 years old at the time in 1915. And the guy was talking about, you know, why he was fighting, why his friends were fighting. And he basically said it was because of states' rights and oppression of the government, invasion of the North into the South kind of thing, which is what the historian Shelby Foote also indicated. And you know this already, I've already talked about this, I'm sorry. The part that I don't like is my comment on that video was something like, this video and this guy's testimony are as important as they are compelling, or this video is as important as it is compelling. Sorry for my stuttering today. It's important because it gives us a window on the past that we don't have unless we listen to that kind of thing. Everything else is written. Everything else is up for debate. But that guy's words are there as evidence. And it's compelling stuff. It puts you into the mindset of the people of that time. So that's basically what I wrote. And then all these people start writing stuff like, oh, you wish the South had won the war. You're a racist. I started off by saying, my family, my ancestors were not even in this country when the war happened. And the reason I said that to start off my thing is to say, look, I don't have a dog in the fight. Not genetically speaking or ancestrally speaking. My people were in Ireland and other places, poor and destitute. So I started with that, and then I also said I'm from the North, which kind of is a way of saying, look, if anything, I side with the North with the whole slavery issue and the oppression and the racism thing. Obviously, slavery, oppression, and racism are wrong. So I try to kind of preface my remarks with that. And this one person writes, "Oh, your ancestors were in Europe. How privileged of them to not be slaves." Like, what are you talking about? I said, "Oh yeah, privilege, yeah. Starving to death in Ireland by the millions, with no land, no rights." When they were first coming to America, the immigrants in the 1860s, they were considered less valuable than slaves. Because a slave you had to pay the owner for. You know, a slave required input of, you need to provide them a place to sleep. You need to provide them food. So, Irish people, you didn't have to do any of that. You paid them barely subsistence living wage. And if they die, there's always another one. Slaves were an investment, which is terrible, absolutely horrible on both scores. Terrible that slaves are considered that way, and terrible that Irish people were considered that way, that humans were considered that way. Anyway, so I said, look, my ancestors were not only not here, but also in a pretty horrible situation. So it started going off the rails with this who suffered more thing. And I said, look, what exactly are you replying to in my original comment? And I finally got the idiot to work it down to, you support slavery. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Just because I recognize that some guy said something, say he said this and it's important for history. How is that supporting slavery? Fucking idiots. Like Rome. Let's say Rome. You look at Rome. You say, okay, they had a Colosseum. And they had gladiatorial games. And they had slaves fighting animals and fighting each other. And people watched this sport and they decided who lived and who died. And you think, oh my God, that is horrible, right? And then, what do? You find an account by, let's say, some guy named Romano, and he talks about the mentality of the time from his own perspective. We didn't see these people as human. We saw them as creatures, you know, whatever the perspective was that justified it in their minds. And you say, wow, that's a real interesting insight. It's a window on the mindset of the person of the time. Isn't that interesting for history to get a little anthropological sample of the mindset and the thinking of that time? And that's valuable to understand how human beings were thinking then. It doesn't mean that I support gladiatorial games, that I support what happened in the Colosseum. That's how I look at the whole Civil War thing. You look at the history of it and you try to understand what people were thinking back then, and having somebody who was really there to serve as a witness to it and a testimony to it provides a valuable perspective. It doesn't mean I support what the guy was saying or agree with it or condone it. So that's the first thing that this person was being stupid about, thinking I supported it. Idiot. The other thing was, this is the point is like this. If you say something that even skews a little bit away from what the person believes, then you must be supporting them. You must be supporting the enemy, what I'm saying. Absolutist thinking. So the person who is watching that video who hates, you know, what happened in the Civil War, blah, 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 their thinking is this: slavery was evil, and the only reason for the war was slavery, and everybody who fought in the war on the southern side was for slavery, and they were evil, and that's why they lost. Well, history is not so cut and dry like that. It's not so one-sided. There was a lot more subtlety to it. Arguments were more nuanced. History is more complicated than we give it credit for because, well, we can't really see the complexity because they're dead. And all we have is certain books, but we don't know what everyone was thinking back then. So what do? We impose our own little views on it. Revisionist historians, right? So that's the first thing. The other thing is they expect, since I don't immediately condemn this guy outright and say everything he has to say is stupid, since I don't do that, it means A, I support him, and B, I think that what I'm saying is that the war was not over slavery. And so they think, oh, you're arguing that the war wasn't over slavery. You're the same as those Nazi Holocaust deniers. Like, no. What I'm saying is the reasons for people to fight in that war were not simply one thing or the other. It was a progression over time, and it depended person by person and what position they were in and where they fought and what level they were at. Obviously, slavery was the founding issue that caused the problem in the first place. Everybody at the time said that. See, that's the thing. In the Articles of Secession, they mentioned slavery 19 times as the reason for the secession. 19 times. I read it. So obviously for the big level, you know, the governmental level, the corporate level, if you want to call it that, slavery was the main reason for the secession. They wanted the freedom to have their slaves. They didn't want the North to dictate to them about slavery, so they seceded because it was going to destroy their economy if they had to, you know, let their slaves go. There's a lot more to it, but that was the main reason governmentally. But individually, you know, the buck private on the ground in Tennessee, who didn't even own slaves, he wasn't fighting for that. He was fighting for other things. Fighting for home, fighting for his state, fighting because he sees what he considers to be an outsider coming in to his area doing damage, and so he's going to fight it. But apparently nowadays people can't see that. They can't understand that. All they can understand is slavery's wrong, therefore the South is completely wrong. Sure, the South may have been wrong for what they did. That's not the point. The point is to understand why they did what they did. And it wasn't simply one thing. And hell, if you want to get really into the nitty-gritty of it, pretty much everyone back then was racist. I mean, they considered black people to be inferior. They considered black people to be less than human. And that was on both sides. So, anyway, if you're going to look at history, look at the subtleties, realize that it's not simply one thing or another, and have a wonderful day. This is Mike Kelly 7. I'll talk to you later. Mileage 6026. 6026.